So that's one way of looping. It's a little bit of a clumsy way in some ways, I suppose. Another perhaps more elegant way would be to use, very simply, an integer object, and if I connect the trigger at the end of the sound file, I'll bang to that number box and then into the toggle object. Then simply by I don't know whether you can see that actually. What I'll do is I'll do that. I pressed Command Y incidentally there, and it's neatened out my patch cables for me rather handily. So if I increase this to a number 1, then a 1 is being sent into the toggle, turning the toggle on, although the toggle itself was still in an on state, I suppose, but sfplay wasn't. Anyway, that 1 is being throughput into sfplay, telling it to play. When playback finishes, a bang is sent out of the right-hand outlet, and then is sent into the 1, making it send that 1 again. And then if I change it to a 0, then obviously that stops the process. So that's another way. So the third way of looping in sfplay is to use a message which tells it to loop, and this is really the way you should do it. So I'll unlock the patch and loop 1. And a lot of objects recognise messages with sort of commands in them as symbols. So you've got open, you've got loop, and there are a variety of other messages that you can send which tell an object how to behave. In this case, loop is sending I suppose a loop true or a loop false message insofar as it's sending a 1 or a 0. So 1 and 0 again being used as, if you like, on-off or true-false messages to particular objects in order to make them function in a particular way. If I were to send a message with, whoops, that's wrong, loop 0, then it would turn looping off. So I could connect both of those messages and use them as means of turning that process. So that's not looping now, but if I press loop and 1, it will loop. And notice that we don't get a bang out of the right-hand side because it's it hasn't finished the process yet. So this is really the way you should be looping your stuff in for sfplay. We'll come back to the loop command in a minute and this business of 1 and 0 to tell it to do something or not to do something. Because essentially what we're doing is sending a command and a way of, well, a command and, if you like, some kind of argument almost. It's not an argument, but it's that kind of thing. And the same is true of the open message here. If I click on open, then as we know, a dialog box comes up and I can choose a new sound to import. But we can also add an extra element to that command. We can tell it what it is that we want it to open. So I can put in sound1.if, and it so happens that in the, let's see down here, I think, yes, in the folder in which I've stored this patch, so if you look, it's called x4a1, and that's where this is stored in this 22 max MSP4 folder. In that folder I also have a sound called sound1.if, and that means, because it's in the same folder as the patch, I can access it from the patch very easily by simply putting in the name of that file. So if I lock the patch now and I click on that open sound1.if message, then I can play that sound. So open will take a message, an additional symbol that tells it what to open. If I wanted it to access a sound on a different part of my hard drive, so not in that folder, I can still do that, but I'd have to put in the full file path for that sound, which would be a little bit laborious. As you will see in a minute, it's quite a long thing to put in. So what we can do instead is use a drag and drop method, which will speed up your file loading process no end. And in order to do that, what I'll do is I will change this sound1.if part of that message to $1. I'm not actually sure whether it should be pronounced $1, but I will for the moment because I don't know what else it should be. So $1. And what that is a kind of wildcard. It throughputs whatever it receives, and adds it to that open first part of the message. So if I send in sound2.if, for example, actually no, I'll change it to sound1 again, although we've already got it open. Connect that to open with the $1 in it, and then send that to print. Then we see that open sound1.if comes up here. So it's just replaced that $1 with whatever it receives. Well, that's not actually particularly useful in this case because I could simply put sound1.if in there. But if I double click on the palette and look for a particular object, which is this one, it's called drop file, and obviously I could also just make an object and call it drop file and it will change into this. If I attach that to the open message box and lock the patch again, then I can go to all of the sounds that oops, that's not what I wanted, sorry. There we go. All of the sounds that I have in my sounds folder, and I can choose one at random, whichever one I want to use. Alarm clock ring will do. Drop it on that drop file, and you will notice, sorry, that I should have made sure that the Max window was visible. But notice that that open message has now been given untitled users Peter Batchelor blah 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 blah, and so the full name of the file and its file path. So this is what I mean about it's quite a long thing, so you wouldn't necessarily be wanting to write that in properly yourself. But this does it for you, so you don't have to worry about it. And that now has opened that sound, and I can do it with any sound. So I could take the match strike and use that one, and so on. So it's a very, very easy way of throughputting messages, if you like. So that's one way of using that $1 item. I'm not sure what else to call it really. Another way of using it is in this loop message. So in this case, we're saying, remember this true and false business, but I could actually get rid of one of those message boxes and replace this with a $1 again. And in this case, if I put a toggle above it, then if I turn the toggle on, so to speak, then it sends a 1 through loop, so loop becomes loop 1, turning the loop mechanism on. If I turn it off, then it sends a 0, so that changes the message to loop 0 and throughputs it, so that sfplay behaves in an appropriate way. So that, again, neatens our patch and speeds the process of all of this. So now I can turn looping on, and eventually it loops. I think that's probably it for this one.